Peace, everybody. Just wanted to go live briefly and build with everybody about today's mathematics. And the reason I do these builds specifically about today's mathematics is to give people, just everyday people, a little insight into and values that we live by as the 5%. And as a nation, sometimes we may have the tendency to speak a little bit over people's heads, and people may strive to figure out what we're actually talking about, opposed to really getting a sense of on. And I wanted to make sure that I make it easily accessible to people who want to learn a little bit more about our way of life. Not necessarily be a 5%er, but learning about a person's perspective, their principles, and their values. Us, peace, divine. It empowers us to develop the type of healthy relationships that are necessary for us as a human family. When a person's way of life is unknown, people may feel insecure. To build relationships when you have that distance between people, because you simply don't have an understanding about where they're coming from, what's important to them, how they view relationships, what their diet is about, and you're more likely going to disrespect or offend people when you don't have a sense of where they're coming from. So today is the first, and in our mathematics, number one represents knowledge. And one way that we describe knowledge is we say that it's the foundation. It's the basis or the premise upon which we establish our way of life. And that's important because knowledge also represents consciousness and awareness. And it being a foundation, in order for you to have a sturdy or firm foundation, it has to have integrity. It has to have a sense of fortitude. So what that also implies is, if you're looking at yourself as the foundation, or if you're looking at yourself as having integrity or fortitude, it implies ethics, it implies a sense of rightness or justness in terms of how you attend the world, how you treat others, your relationship with the environment. So when you're looking at knowledge, there are many synonyms that are associated with it, words that are connected to what it means to have a sturdy or firm foundation, a foundation that's built with integrity and fortitude. And when we're approaching other people, it's important for us to get a sense of what their foundation is. Is there a sense of integrity? Do they have a sense of fortitude? And the more that you learn about people, the better equipped you are to relate to them. The less that we know about people, the less equipped we are to actually forge healthy relationships. When I'm speaking to younger people, it's pretty easy to put it in the context of relationships. You know, you ask a person, hey, is it important for you to get to know the person before you make them your girlfriend or before this person becomes your boyfriend? And it's easy for them to see that, because you might end up getting something that you don't want, or forming a bond with someone that may not really be interested in forming a bond with you, right? So knowledge or knowing or becoming more aware or more conscious of where a person stands, going back to what I meant about the foundation, what they stand upon, what their principles are, what their values are, what's important to them, it gives you a greater sense of how to actually relate to that person and meet them where they actually are, as opposed to having assumptions or unreasonable expectations on where you think they should be or where they shouldn't be. So another thing that we say about knowledge is to look, listen, observe, and respect. Knowledge is also being receptive. It's being observant, which implies you know how to listen. So in our language, one of the things that we say is you need to do the knowledge first. You need to be observant. You need to live of what's actually going on before you take the initiative. Why is that important? The foundation or the basis where wisdom, well, how? Well, if you're not really being observant, if you're not being an active listener, if you're not being receptive or taking things in order to learn, then it's going to be very difficult to make wise decisions because you have nothing to stand upon. You have no data, you have no information, you have no sense of awareness or consciousness, you have none of that. So how could you make a wise decision or choice or even use wise words if thing to base that upon? So we say that wisdom is a manifestation of knowledge. It's the exact same thing with making sure that you're observant, you're receptive, you're an active listener in order to get a sense of what's around you, but also within you. We may not do the knowledge on our own body. And a lot of the illnesses that we have are preventable just simply because we may not be as aware or conscious of what's actually going on within us and taking the appropriate steps to get the type of support and assistance that we need by just listening to our own body, listening to the things that may not really feel or sound like there is a sense of equality that's going on within us. So that's very, very important, very important. And I need to speak on this as well. Knowledge being our foundation doesn't mean that we're know-it-all. Because some people may have the tendency to come across like that. Just because they know certain things and they may do well on Jeopardy, it doesn't mean that you automatically have access to wisdom. Knowledge, wisdom doesn't automatically mean that you're going to have access to wisdom just because you know something. Look at knowledge within the context of academia. There's a lot of people that know a lot of things. But when it comes to activating that knowledge and being wise with how they treat themselves or how they treat others, it's just not there. You know? True indeed, divine, and you already know. Absolutely. So the beautiful thing about our mathematics is that as the 5%, they're not our intellectual property. That belong to all human family members. If you choose to align with these particular principles of life, we don't actually own them. We life processes and we organize them in a way that enables people to utilize them to grow and develop. So prior to 1964 to 1969, when the mathematics were being constructed and implemented, these were natural principles in life that you could just observe. They didn't start in the 1960s. They were only constructed in a contemporary way. and expressed by us as the 5%. But the principles themselves have always been here. And when you just examine different societies, you can always see these principles being carried out. So it's nothing new. It's not magic. They're just natural life processes or principles of life that we naturally identify. And we organize them and structure them in such a way to make it accessible to children. That's one reason why when Allah the Father first started to teach, that the target demographic were the youth, because they naturally didn't have access to these type of principles and values. They were usually the most neglected and left out of organizations. And he realized that if this is truly sustainable, if this is something that is going to stand the test of time, and it has to be given to the youth. It has to be given to the youth. If they're going to ensure that they carry it into the next generation if they see the value or the importance in it. And that ability, if you don't have youth a part of your organization or institution, then whatever you say is important is going to die with you. And that is the reason why we are still here today from the 60s, because our target demographic has always been the youth. We've always realized that for sustainability, to make sure that we will be here generations to come, you have to give it to the youngest in the family. But again, in order to do that, you have to do the knowledge first. You have to have a foundation. You have to have a sense of fortitude, which again implies ethics. That's peace. It implies ethics. So even though some people may look at knowledge as having a sense of neutrality or being neutral, because it represents the foundation, and the foundation has to have fortitude and integrity. Fortitude and integrity implies ethics, a sense of right or rightness or justness. That is the reused tools like squares in building a foundation, because a square allows you to draw a right angle. Right, just, true, all are associated with a strong and a firm foundation, having integrity and fortitude. So one of the ways that you to assess what a person knows or their knowledge, look at their ethics. Look at the rightness or the wrongness in what they say and what they do. Because if it's right, then it's going to be aligned with the type of integrity or fortitude that enables that structure that the foundation is built upon to stand and to have sustainability. I don't care what I know or what anybody knows. How are you ethically carrying that out? What is your integrity in terms of what it is that you know? Right? What's your fortitude? So knowledge is more than just information and just data. It has a lot of different dimensions to it that are very important to understand. Say the primary focus or few pursuant of knowledge, that naturally comes along with knowledge. Meaning knowledge, like I said, some people may look at it as neutral, but there's always going to be some question of integrity and fortitude and ethics along with what it is that you know or what you've been made aware of or how you're conscious of it. You can get knowledge of a certain type of plant, right? But you're going to eventually have to answer the question, what are the properties of this plant and how can it be used? There's going to be a rightness or wrongness in regards to the properties and the application of that plant. It's the exact same thing with anything in life. But in terms of what you're saying about the focus and the few pursuant to knowledge, I think it is a good thing if a person learns about something in terms of knowledge or awareness or consciousness to consider what are the ethical implications in a very practical way, not being philosophical or theoretical about what are the practical applications, right? Because that will align you with the natural integrity or fortitude that comes along with what it is that represents knowledge or represents that foundation. So for example, you can learn some information related to diet. You can learn some information, right? How you align with that information is going to determine the sustainability of what it is that you've been made aware of. And a certain type of food is not healthy anymore. So now what you gonna do? You gotta make a decision. You're gonna eat it, or are you gonna fade it and eat something more healthier? You have a decision to make. And based upon the decision that you make is going to determine not only your sustainability, but how you are aligned with the integrity or fortitude of that information that you've learned. So sometimes people learn things and they just want to walk around and be a know-it-all or correct people all the time. But when you look at their life, is there an ethical relationship to what it is that they know? What does their foundation look like? Do they have a sense of integrity and fortitude? True indeed, the practicality of it. Because if a person can't use it, what is its use? Right? So come on briefly and just share some of my thoughts about knowledge and its relationship to being the foundation, as we say, and that it's more than just data or information or being aware of something or conscious of something. Knowledge being a foundation means that it has to have fortitude. It has to have a sense of sustainability and integrity. When you're talking about fortitude and integrity, you're also talking about a sense of ethics, a moral code. And think about that. People that we may no longer have the type of relationship with that we may have had in the past, sometimes it may be because of ethical reasons. They did something that wasn't really in line with the sense of integrity or fortitude that we stand upon. So that relationship was no longer sustainable because they did something to undermine or erode that relationship. If something, then you're not going to see elements that undermine or erode it, because it's a sure foundation. So I would this was inspiring, it was empowering, it was educational, and gave you just a sense of what I was. Also, check out my shirt. says museums are not neutral. And that just kind of goes in alignment with what I was talking about. Like these spaces that we're in, they're not just decorative of things that have been collected from different human family members so people could observe it. It's not a neutral place or neutral space. It's a place that's making an ethical stance of what these mean to the human family members. It's a very political stance that is being made when you go to some of these spaces and you see certain type of art or cultural artifacts or objects. They're not neutral. So y'all enjoy the rest of your day. I'll build with you again, and thanks for tuning in.